Hi, and welcome to episode 43 of CultureWatch Radio. I'm Andrew Smith, and with me is Bill Muhlenberg. Bill, once again there's a David and Goliath situation where they're coming down to a local area council member to call out Premier Daniel Andrews over his COVID diktats and blatant power grab. Why is this?
Well, good question, Andrew. And in fact, we've discussed a number of these kind of Davids in this Goliath situation. Thankfully, we've had some champions here speaking out. And, well, if you're biblically aware, you know that God often uses a remnant. He uses the weak and the small to confound the big and the wise. So, in a sense, we can expect this to happen. So whenever we do learn of further champions who are standing up to the tyranny of Dan Andrews, it's always great to have a chat with them. And yeah, I believe today we've got another such champion who is defying the odds, is standing strong, is a valiant warrior. We could use a lot of adjectives here, but we're thankful that there are some speaking out, and it's great to have her with us.
Yeah. Here's an example of what she said at the last local council meeting.
This week, after some of the harshest and longest lockdowns in the world, after hoarding all the state's powers and using them to crush public dissent, after constantly promoting fear, contempt and division, after trampling over patient-doctor confidentiality and the principles of free and informed consent for medical procedures, and after gleefully announcing that Victoria will now embark on a new era of social segregation, Daniel Andrews had the arrogance to refer to himself as a father figure, when in reality he is much more like Big Brother from Orwell's dystopian novel 1984. The government has admitted that COVID-vaxxed and COVID-unvaxxed people can both catch, carry and transmit COVID viruses and almost at the same rate. Yet only one of those groups is being treated as though they are inherently dirty, diseased and dangerous. Only one of those groups has been denied a place in public. Only one of those groups has been denied the right to do honest work to support their families. Only one of those groups is being denied the right to attend swimming lessons and school concerts with their children. Only one of those groups is being told to wait outside like dogs when picking up online orders of clothes or shoes for their children. Only one of those groups has been barred from representing their voters in Parliament House. And may I just applaud the principled stand of the 5 MPs who stood up against that anti-democratic legislation: Neil Angus, Catherine Cummings, Tim Quilty, David Limbrick and Adam Somyurak, and Bernie Finn. That's 6. Only one of those groups has been labelled ignorant and selfish by the very same government, internationally branded as, and I quote, a model of what not to do in a pandemic. The very same government that, when investigated over just one of its own absurd mismanagement scandals, turned out to be led by a bunch of goldfish who couldn't recall a single relevant detail. One of the most important lessons I've learned during my first year as a councillor is that local government council is often where the rubber hits the road when it comes to state government laws. And my creeping assumption is that this government and all governments like it need to be reminded that they exist to protect human rights, not to blackmail us with them. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, totally nailed it. And we've got her with us today, introducing Maura Deeming. G'day, Maura.
G'day, Andrew. G'day, Bill.
Maura, when you were making that speech, which totally encapsulated everything and put it into perspective, did it feel like exasperation or was it therapeutic? And how was it received by the others?
To tell you the truth, I was really feeling convicted, actually, that I needed to speak up. All throughout that month, I had been contacted by people who were facing losing their jobs, having to choose between taking a vaccine that they had very real and reasonable concerns over and feeding their family. And it was a very emotional month, actually. And I just became very convicted that it might not be my responsibility as a local government councillor to comment on state matters like that. But, I had to speak up. And so I used my 3 minutes to condemn the government and to say what I really thought about it all. And just before the speech, I could barely speak, actually. I was quite nervous. And But, I had people praying for me, but I just reminded myself that, I can read. I've written a speech. I can just read it out. So I put my Word document over the screen so I couldn't see the other councillors' faces. And then I just read it out. And when I watched it back, I could read that I definitely didn't have all of the support in the room, but I did actually have some supporters in that room. And so, and I think that they appreciate that I have spoken out, and it's not something that they're willing to do themselves yet, but I think I am gaining support. And I'm hoping that it will give other people, to see that I'm not getting crushed with backlash, that they might speak up too. In fact, the response outside of council has been amazing. My speech has gotten, I think, 13,500 views now, and I think over half of those have been watching it all the way through. And I've just had outpourings of support, people saying thank you. And that's not what I thought would happen. I thought I would get the backlash that everyone tells you you'll get if you stand up against the left, that they'll ruin your career, you'll be an outcast, your friends will drop you. They tell you that. They want us to be so afraid to say what we're really thinking and to ask questions that need answers. They want us to be petrified. They want us to think the cost is sky high. And I do worry about that sometimes, but I try and just ignore it and get through my 2 minutes of speech on whatever it is or whatever the task that is that I have to do before me. And I think it's worth it, that's all, even if they were right. But as it happens, they're not right.
Yeah. So would this be why so few others are speaking out against or what they can see in plain sight? Or do they just simply need somebody who is brave enough and they can go line up behind her?
I think it's a little bit of, column A, a little bit of column B. I think we need flag bearers. We absolutely need flag bearers. And I think even though if I don't affect any change, I think I really feel convicted that I just need to speak. I might not be able to make a difference other than just making a speech, which is frustrating to me. But I do think that it's important that we just keep speaking the truth in the public square. And I think, if it does encourage one person to speak up, then that's good. And it has obviously encouraged people, but also I've been, I have to be honest, other people have faced further harsher risks than I have. They can't fire me from council for that. They cannot get me for that. But there were staff at council who were very afraid to speak up, and lots of them have been mistreated basically, and lots of people in our community have been mistreated and bullied in their workplaces. But if I lost this job at council, I wouldn't really care because it's not my dream to be in politics. I was driven by, just such frustration at what's going on in politics. I have 4 children. I love to be a teacher. And I was sort of driven out of those areas and into politics because I was so frustrated with what was going on. I just kept on feeling that conviction that I needed to speak up and speak up and speak up. And, I'm not the breadwinner in my family. And so, my husband had to take that vax. He didn't want to take that vax. He felt very coerced. And so, it has impacted my family personally. And it's been very, very frightening and frustrating for us. And, but, at the end of the day, they can't really touch me. They can't make anybody who loves me and knows me think that I'm an actual bigot. They can't actually make anybody who really knows me believe that anything that about me that they've lied about. They've lied about a few things. They say I'm homophobe, a transphobe, because also I've spoken out against the transgender issue. But I just learned that, yes, they can make people who don't know me hate me, but that doesn't matter.
It's not like you're on their Christmas card list anyway.
Yeah, and I don't know them, and so what do I care?
Yes. Daniel Andrews sees himself as a father figure to those whose lives he's exerting almost an intimate control over. Is this a kind of sickness or is he serious? I mean, I believe there was a similar thing happening in Western Australia with their Premier, who was portrayed by his own party ahead of Father's Day earlier this year as the state dad.
Well, if you look back through history, that's what dictators did do. They tried to piggyback on those intrinsic loyalties that we have towards families, to that inner desire that we have for fathers to be loving and protective and to look after us. And they used and abused and, appropriated that language and that imagery when they were just abusing everybody. If they are a father figure, they are an abusive father figure. They are an abusive, coercive, controlling father who doesn't give the children any freedom. They're not the good father figure. And so they can use that word and they can appropriate that image. But what they're actually doing is crushing families, crushing real fathers coercing real fathers, crushing their dignity, coercing them to go and undertake vaccines that they don't want to take, feeling degraded, feeling dehumanized. One of my friends' husbands made sure that he booked into a GP so that a GP would have to look him in the eye. And he, when he signed the informed consent, he crossed out, I don't know what the box is, and he wrote, "No, I submit, I do not consent." And nobody looked at it. They filed it away and they jabbed him. They were all sort of dead-eyed, and they booked him in for his next appointment before he left, even though he said he didn't want to have it. He was here under, duress and all that kind of stuff. They just sort of ignored him and jabbed him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just terrible.
Everybody knows what's going on. Nobody can speak up. But you have. Bill, this is a weird place for governments to be going. I mean, is this going to end well, and what can we do?
Well, it never ends well when the state becomes a big brother and decides everything about you, including what medical treatment you can take or should take or even be forced to take. I mean, that never ends well. We did the same thing not all that long ago in Germany in the 30s and 40s. So bad was it that we had a thing called the Nuremberg trials and the Nuremberg Code, which spoke out against forced medical treatment, that said we must have full voluntary consent, informed consent. But, when you're power drunk, as it seems Dan Andrews is and so many others are, they just think they can get away with murder. And I'm greatly encouraged by what we've just heard today. And if I can piggyback on that, as originally from America, some of you may know that we just recently had some elections in the U.S., and I'm thinking of another fellow. He wasn't a politician at all. He was a businessman, a Christian, a conservative, in the same way as Maura felt the need to get involved and to speak out. He did as well. He decided to run as governor in the state of Virginia. And against all the odds, everybody's still scratching their heads, he just won. He got in and defeated the Democrat candidate. And now Joe Biden, the Democrats are in real pain. They're thinking, oh no, what have we unleashed? And these were, again, simple, basic mom and dad issues. In this case, school choice, what parents can have in terms of education for their children. Should it be nonstop trans agenda, critical race theory? These were the issues he focused on, and to everyone's great surprise, he won. And there were some other wins yesterday in the U.S. So there are a lot of these David and Goliath stories, and as I said, that's usually the way it works. And Billy Graham once had said that when people stand up and speak in courageous fashion, it strengthens the backbone of others. So this is the way forward. We probably can't expect the masses to help. We can't expect politicians and governments to help. But if we get a handful of brave individuals who are willing to pay the price, speak up, count the cost, and make a difference, well, that's how we're going to see more and more wins. So this is exciting, and I'm glad we've got champs like Maura with us.
Yes, brave individuals that the rest of us can line up behind. Always on the pulse. There's more at the Culture Watch website. And we'll see you again next week with another episode of Culture Watch Radio. Subscribe where you listen at SoundCloud, YouTube and Rumble so you don't miss a thing.